with demand expected to come back, the question remains, does this mean the economy is back on track?
Companies now, after experimenting with offshore in places like India, Philippines, and Poland, want to bring those jobs back.
We invest in the U.S. We're the biggest exporter in the country. In the cycle we're in right now, we're creating jobs.
From Radio America, it's Neil Asbury's Made in America, the show that explores American industry, large and small, and promotes American-made products everywhere. Put Neil Asbury's Made in America to work for you.
A very big welcome to you today. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Roffman. So, Rich, the impeachment, what is it? It's not the trial. The trial is in the Senate. So I guess the investigation. We're in an investigation in the House of Representatives right now. But the amazing thing is that the markets don't seem to get rattled by this.
No, they haven't been at all. And because everyone knows the outcome of this anyway. And they all know it's kabuki theater. And they all know how it's been controlled. And so we've seen this coming for a long... Listen, we've been going through investigation after investigation after investigation since before Trump actually was sworn in as the president. So we're almost calloused to this at this point. So the only one who's going to be screaming for it are those on the left who can say, oh, my God, we got him. This is happening, and he shouldn't have done it, and it's really terrible. Of course, don't look at Biden or anybody else who did a quid pro. But again, it doesn't matter whether it's a quid pro quo. They keep morphing into other things. Now it's bribery. We're having a conversation about bribery. So they're going to try and find bribery. Well, maybe that is high crimes, misdemeanors, and so forth like that. So, yeah, it's very exciting. And I don't think the markets are, obviously they've hit some highs this week.
Yeah, they're not particularly concerned about it. And I guess if there was a real threat of impeachment and there was a real crime that was committed. It's also fascinating, too, to see that the Las Vegas bookies, in Las Vegas, obviously you can place bets on just about anything. But at this point, President Trump is still is predicted by the bookies, the people who make bets. This is real money, putting their money on President Trump still to win in 2020.
Well, they're running into Bellagio to make those bets. That's what's happening. First they go outside and they look at the Trump fountain and make sure the fountain, you've been there, and Bellagio's got these great colorful fountains that go on. And then they go inside and they bet on Trump.
Yeah, incredible. But by the way, I thought that Michael Bloomberg would have caused a little bit more of a stir than he has. I guess he's created a stir, but not in a positive way amongst the Democrats. The Democrat Party has gone so far to the left right now that a guy like Michael Bloomberg, was just totally persona non grata. I think he started as a Republican. He was then an independent. And now he's a Democrat. He's gone right across the spectrum, but his newfound party don't seem to embrace him.
No. What's interesting, you would think by now that from the 4,700 people that started out running for president on the left side, on the Democrat side, I think anybody who actually stayed at a Holiday Inn Express could actually sign up for that right now. I think they have that program. Because if you do that,
run for president.
No, you get more points and you can stay more nights. Stay for 3 nights, get 4. If you run for president, you get 5, something like that. But you would think by now they would have whittled that down. But it's going in the other direction to a degree. Now we've got Bloomfield. You have the ex-governor of Massachusetts. Who everyone says is the next Obama, and everyone's going to relate to him. He's really smart. He's really wonderful. Of course, he did work for Bain Capital. May not work for him as well as others. But and then Hillary's out there saying they love me. They really love me. And many people, how many? Well, many. I think she used 4 manys. By next week, it'll be 5 manys. But
want her to run.
Well, it may even be on Sesame Street because the count can count manys pretty soon and let you know how many there are. So, but it seems to be growing rather than getting more restrictive.
Well, the Supreme Court is going to be making a lot of important decisions before the election next year. A lot of really important cases coming before the court. But the Supreme Court just recently has allowed the Sandy Hook family's lawsuit against the gun maker to proceed. And the gun maker is Remington. Very large manufacturer of firearms. So, what does that mean? What does it mean for business? Can any product that is made to be used for something that has been used for what it was not intended to commit a very heinous crime, can those manufacturers be sued? And, where is this thing going? We're very pleased to have on the show John Lott, who's the president of the Crime Prevention Research Center and also the author of More Guns, Less Crime. John, welcome to Made in America.
Thanks for having me on.
So tell us what the Supreme Court has just said that they're just not going to hear this lawsuit, and they're going to allow, I guess it is the state of Connecticut, to continue with the lawsuits in the federal courts in the state of Connecticut. So what is the likely outcome of this?
Well, it's not quite right. I mean, they're private parties that have brought this suit. It's not the state of Connecticut. They're essentially saying it's too early for them to get involved in this. Not too surprising with the Supreme Court. They're going to let it go forward. The claim basically But it's going to go forward in the state of Connecticut, is that correct? Right, it's going to be going forward in state court in Connecticut. In state courts, that's right. And, the claim is that the company, Remmington, that made this gun was responsible for encouraging its use, encouraging the purchase of it to go and be used in this type of crime because of things like the advertising and the fact that the gun was used in a computer game where shooting occurred. But, you read the ads that they're pointing to, and the ads are talking about use by law enforcement, use by people for self-defense, saying, people won't be a victim. Those seem like perfectly reasonable things to me. This use in the computer game, I'm not even sure one can even tell it's that gun. And besides, as far as I can tell, it looks like the computer game is actually using a machine gun, a fully automatic gun, and that's not what's being sold here. We're talking about the guns that Remington is selling that was used in the Sandy Hook massacre were semi-automatics. And beyond all that, the killer wasn't the one who bought the gun. It was his mom who bought the gun, and he stole the gun from the mom in order to use it in this attack. So anyway, it seems to me it's going to be a real leap. I think the gun control advocates who are pushing this feel it's worthwhile for them doing this, even though it may not look like they have a strong case at this point. That's not what the Supreme Court or the lower courts have been involved with deciding, whether or not it's a strong case or not. The reason why the gun control advocates want to go forward with this is that they hope in discovery they're going to find some memos or something inside the company that they can go and twist in some way to make more out of them than probably was meant at the time that they were written.
So it sounds like that when they go to court and they do this, Neil, and they're legislating emotion rather than legalities necessarily in this case. For example, how does the PLCAA come into the play when we look at these with cases? That's the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act. That was enacted, I would presume, to prevent exactly lawsuits such as this. And given what you said is 100% correct. Obviously, the shooter stole the gun from his parents, his mother. He actually killed his mother, and then went to the school and shot the other students. But the gun was legally purchased. It was not purchased for malicious and evil purposes. So what happens if in fact this goes forward and judgments are handed down? What happens to the PLCAA? Because then other gun manufacturers, obviously, and this is where they want to go, other gun manufacturers are going to be, very concerned about this.
Right. Well, what the claim is that this isn't covered by the law that you're referring to, the 2004 law that. And the reason is because they're saying that the company here actively encouraged someone to go and use the gun in a crime. I think they're going to have a hard time making that claim with regard to the ads. And with regard to the fact that a gun that looks like it is used in a computer game, I don't even know any evidence that they provided so far that Adam Lanza, the killer in this case, even played that particular computer game, and that show that, and as I say, it's not even really the same gun, because the gun that's used in the computer game, or at least illustrated in the computer game, is a fully automatic machine gun. That's not what this semi-automatic AR-15 type gun is. And so I don't know. I mean, it seems to me that they're going to have quite a few hoops to jump through. I'm sure they'll go for a jury trial. And the issue is, will the jurors feel like they just have to go and help out, even if they don't believe that the company was liable? You may end up getting people who want to punish the company for doing these things, or you may get a jury who just feels that, well, even if the company didn't do anything wrong, the people who were harmed were so badly harmed that at least we'll make somebody liable, somebody will pay for the damage that's there. That's my own guess about what they may be hoping for. But I think the real thing, as I said, that they're going for here, at least in the short run, is discovery, where they think that once they can get discovery and once they can go and maybe find some memo that may have been innocently written to begin with, but maybe can be reinterpreted in some way. That's what they're aiming for right now.
Hey, John, we really appreciate you being on the show. John Lott, who's the president of the Crime Prevention Research Center. His website is crimeresearch.org. John is also the author of More Guns, Less Crime. Hey, John, thanks for being on the show.
Sure, anytime. Thank you very much.
Coming up, Dr. Ruffman and I still have much, much more to talk about. You don't want to miss it.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with the co-host, Dr. Rich Ruffman. Rich, I mean, it is incredibly heartbreaking whenever you hear about these mass murders taking place in our country, and Sandy Hook and the kids. They were first graders, 20 first graders, 6 teachers. I mean, it makes your heart ripped out. But look what's happened since then. I mean, so many more examples of these terrible, terrible crimes.
Well, including down here at Parkland just about a year ago, a little over a year ago or so, 2 years ago.
Yeah, and well, throughout the country, and even this past week in California.
That's right.
At a school, and you go right across the country. So it's not in any one geographic area. It's not any one demographic. It's across the country, and so I can understand how guns and the use of guns, and is it guns which is the problem? And it's terrible that these crimes happen, but it's people who create the crimes. It's not the guns. And the guns, are going to be there no matter what happens. I mean, what is it? Beto O'Rourke. I mean, he's gone now, right? But he was talking about confiscating or mandatory buybacks or whatever.
We're going to come to your house. That's what lost it for him.
And let me tell you, he was out of the race very shortly after that. And not even this very, very ultra-liberal, progressive group of Democrat presidential candidates even supported that position, right? It's just not a winning issue across the country if you want to be elected to public office on a national basis. Even in many, many states, and even in states like in New England and in states with any sort of hunting culture and outdoor culture, gun control is a very, very sensitive issue. So I just don't know. I mean, I understand very much the families that's been impacted by this, and it's absolutely terrible. I can't imagine being in those positions. It's absolutely terrible. In fact, one of my employees got a call when they had the shooting in Parkland that while it was going on. And, he ran up there, and was outside the school, and for several hours was unable to reunite with,
they don't know.
With his
That's
child.
horrible.
Right? They're there, and they know something terrible is going on, but they can't do anything about it, and they're standing there. And he's explaining that to me, and I'm like getting chills because I can't imagine being in that position. I mean, it's absolutely terrible. But this is a very, very complicated issue. Hey, what kind of gun control reform can you actually get passed, and what will happen? But then the issue of, going after the gun manufacturers themselves and trying to get huge settlements. And then what other products are out there in the market that if somebody used improperly and they got hurt,
knives,
and something terrible happened,
knives.
So now do you sue the manufacturer for anything that would be used for that product that wasn't intended to be used, that created a crime? So I don't know. I just don't know. I don't have the answer.
Well, very often in cases like this, you can go to the media. You can go to entertainment media and try and find discussion on this. I mean, John Grisham, as a writer, a very successful writer. I don't particularly care for his politics, but I love his books. His books are terrific. But Runaway Jury, based in New Orleans, talks about a family that sues the gun manufacturer for a shooting that occurred in a workplace environment, and it's a very contested jury trial between Dustin Hoffman plays the person who's representing the plaintiff, and Gene Hackman plays the head of the attorneys protecting the defendant, and they really, Grisham really plays it emotionally, and I understand that the manufacturers are the bad guys. They'll do anything horrible to get their products out there. They don't care whether someone's killed or not. They only care if they sell another 20 guns that day, or 30 guns, or 100 guns, or 50,000 guns. It doesn't make any difference. I'm not going to tell you the end of the Runaway Jury. It's a great story. It's very similar to the one he did also in New Orleans, which was The Rainmaker, which talks about insurance industries and how they're heartless, which to a degree some of them are. But they take on these major things. The thing that concerns me is exactly what you said, that if, in fact, you can sue a manufacturer of a gun who had absolutely nothing. He created a product, a legal product, that was bought legally, that get into the wrong hands by whomever, obviously either bad people or mentally ill people, obviously. What do you do with that? How do you deal with that? And if, in fact, you can do it to a gun, why can't you do it to any other weapon? Why can't you do it to a car? Why can't you do it with ice falling? I mean, it's very interesting if you go that route, because where does it stop? And that's a very difficult answer.
Yes. So unfortunately here at Made in America, we do not have the answers to a very, very complex issue. Hey, Rich, we're going to switch gears. We're going to talk about small business and entrepreneurship with our next guest, Ray Keating, Chief Economist at the Small Business and Entrepreneurship Council. He's been with us before. A great guest. You don't want to miss it.
Made in America.
Sharply higher at the open, stocks continued to perform well over the course of the day Tuesday.
And I think that bodes well here over the next couple of years for having bigger demands coming to this country.
Now, more of Neil Asbury's Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman. So, Rich, we were just talking a moment ago about the market, the overall stock market, right, and what's happening. And though we're in this era of impeachment, I guess that was ultimately going to happen with investigation, looking for a crime anywhere So now they think, at least the Democrats think that they might have found one. But it's not rattling the markets. It's not rattling the markets, which is amazing. And you would think with all this negativity and, the mainstream media who are completely aligned with the House Democrats in impeaching President Trump and the negativity that they're spewing 24/7, it just does not stop. So how does this message that, hey, look, there's a lot of great things happening in our country. Confidence seems to be high amongst our small businesses and our entrepreneur community. It's very positive, very strong. It's amazing with all of this noise going on that small businesses and our entrepreneurs, our risk takers, our inventors, they're still staying focused, they're investing, and they're building their businesses. Let's bring on our next guest, Ray Keating, who's the chief economist at the Small Business and Entrepreneurship Council. Ray, thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, Neil, how are you?
Good. So, the resilience of our small businesses and our entrepreneurs, they must not be watching the cable television or the nightly news or reading the newspapers.
They don't have time to running their businesses.
Yeah. But even in glancing, you would think that, hey, look, there's all this crazy stuff going on. And, look at some of the candidates that's running for president. And, our country, we've got this major roadblock ahead of us. But no, they don't seem to be thinking that. I mean, what you see in the polls, and one specifically, the Wells Fargo Gallup Small Business Index, they seem to be in a good place right now. What do you think?
Yeah, no, when you look at the numbers, they're pretty striking. And in terms of, the Wells Fargo Gallup survey, as you mentioned, and some other ones, confidence among small business owners remains high. Actually, the Gallup poll shows it increasing over the last 3 surveys, quarterly surveys that they've taken. It's not too surprising. I mean, small business owners, entrepreneurs, as I say in the title of this piece, they are an optimistic, resilient bunch. Otherwise, they wouldn't be out there starting up and running their own businesses. So it's this survey talks about the fact that they're very optimistic for their own situation, their own financial scenario for their business looking ahead. So yeah, they're doing what small business owners do.
Well, I think you're right, and I think they're doing their thing. They're enjoying the economic environment right now. They're seeing expansion and growth, and they're feeling good about that. They have many fewer restrictions than they had. But it also seems like, Federal Chief Powell spoke this week, and he said he sees sustainable expansion likely for the economy. And his one caveat that he echoed very, very sternly is that he's worried about unsustainable federal debt. That concerns him. But he does see that the economy is going to keep expanding and moving forward. And it appears that the confidence level on this with the small business folks is following that.
Yeah, and it's interesting. There are a lot of. I mean, I try to keep my eye on a whole bunch of different things that are around in the policy world and in the economy overall. It's kind of interesting because there are a few things that there's always something that's going to worry me, but. In this one poll, it was kind of interesting to see that small business owners are very optimistic about things overall and their own situation. But when they were asked about a recession, it was kind of interesting. I think, 33% said they actually expected an economic downturn or recession in the coming 12 months, and then another 34% said it was somewhat likely. So that really struck me, that you basically have 67% saying that a downturn or a recession, they expect it in the next 12 months, yet they are so positive about their own situation and about at least the present situation in the economy. So, it's always the economic numbers, especially over the last 10 to 12, maybe even 15 years, always seem to offer conflicting indicators and so on. But that one really struck me, that they saw this, but yet they were still confident in their own situation.
The question I have, and you're right, and that's still percolating out there. But I think if we retrospect a little bit and you go back to April and just before April, I mean, if you're going to do a poll in April, for example, that means people are thinking that psychologically they're thinking back to March and they're thinking back to February because there are influencers that are out there that affect their opinion. And at that time, it was in vogue to say, well, we expect a recession. Everybody was saying a recession. NBC, ABC, CNN, MSNBC, CNBC. All of them were pushing recession as part of this scenario that we were trying to show that the economy is not doing that well to undermine, the Trump economy. So there seems to be a dichotomy. You're right. It's interesting. There's a dichotomy of opinion here, and yet we're seeing very, very nice continuing expansion. The market's doing well. We hit records again this week in spite of everything that's happening. What do you think is going to come down the pike as we finish out the year?
Yeah, it's tough to. I mean, even the date. You have the confidence numbers, survey numbers, and then even some of the key data are telling a little bit, slightly different stories. If you look at, for example, the jobs data, the most recent numbers for October were good. Over the long haul, we've had a solid picture or trend in terms of employment. But when you look at the GDP data, it's not like we're rocking and rolling here. We just came in the last quarter at 1.9%. That's not good. So it's a very strange time. As I said, it lends itself, quite frankly, to whatever kind of leaning or bias you have. You can pick your number and point to it because it is a mixed story on a lot of numbers. The two things that worry me going forward, the small business stuff is great. I love this, and this is important because small business, we are a small business economy, so that's critical. The two things that worry me going forward is the decline that we saw in business investment in the GDP numbers. That's troubling now, and it's troubling for down the road. And then also the stagnation, the decline we've seen in the trade numbers in GDP. Those are the two things that worry me right now. A lot of other things are very positive. So it's almost like, hey, are you optimistic today or pessimistic? How are you feeling? You can look at certain numbers and something will back you up.
Hey, Ray, we're going to take a quick break. We're on with Ray Keating, Chief Economist at the Small Business and Entrepreneurship Council. We're together with Dr. Rich Rothman. We're going to be back with a lot more to discuss. Stay with us.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host Dr. Rich Rothman, and we are together with Ray Keating, the Chief Economist at the Small Business and Entrepreneurship Council. So, Ray, of course, you got this impeachment thing going on, but it looks like, both sides are pretty hardened, right? I mean, if you like the president, you're looking past this. It's all a sham. If you hate the president, then obviously he's created a huge crime and he's got to go. But there just doesn't seem to be a change of opinion going on. And it doesn't look like the American people, and certainly not the American small business and entrepreneurs, are tuning in. They seem to be building their businesses. They're too busy working and investing. So amazing to watch that. So are there some things out there that might break that's been kind of holding back? And one of those things is the USMCA, the trade agreement to replace NAFTA. Now, Nancy Pelosi this week said that she thought a deal on the USMCA was imminent. So can this highly, highly divisive Congress that we have, with all of the charged emotions going on, can they pull back and can they get a deal done? Is that possible in the House today?
Right. Can they walk and chew gum at the same time? Can they do their jobs even as they're dealing with, the other aspects of their jobs, even as they're dealing with the impeachment stuff? Let's hope so. And the fact that she said that is very encouraging because obviously the House is the obstacle there. When you look at the USMCA, there's a good deal in there for small businesses to be pleased about, stronger intellectual property protections. There's a digital trade chapter that makes things easier and reduces costs and burdens. So it's, NAFTA I know it's very controversial, but, when you look at the numbers, NAFTA has been good for both, for the Canadian economy, the Mexican economy, and our economy. And when you look at the numbers, trade is overwhelmingly about, in terms of the number of businesses that are in it, there's small businesses involved in this in a big, big way. The vast majority of firms that are exporters and importers are small businesses. So getting this USMCA done, getting an uncertainty off the table for business, if you will, on the trade front would be a big plus. So I'm very hopeful that we can overcome or put aside these other issues, impeachment, et cetera, and actually do something that's positive for the economy overall.
And I know that Rich and I often talk about the China tariffs, and you talk about small businesses. Well, that's another black cloud. You talk about the importers and exporters who are involved with trade with China. The overwhelming majority are small businesses and entrepreneurs.
Absolutely correct. And that's, when you look at the numbers, the breakdown by business, again, you're right, it's small businesses, it's farmers, et cetera. When you look at how important trade is to our economy, it's been increasingly so in recent decades. I ran the numbers recently, roughly, over the last few decades, roughly 40% of our economic growth comes from trade. So this is one of the reasons why we spoke about earlier that, the GDP economic growth number, the real growth numbers have not been particularly robust. They've been below average. And part of that reason is a decline in trade. So we need to get these barriers removed and get some confidence in terms of businesses being able to go out there and trade. And remember, it's I get very frustrated sometimes with trade because people look at it as the U.S. trading with Mexico. That's not how it works. It's individuals and businesses in each country trading with each other. And free trade agreements just merely knock down or reduce governmental obstacles and barriers to that. So if we understand that it's trade between individuals and businesses, and businesses, then we should welcome it because, you know what, if you didn't, as I taught my economics students for many years, it's a voluntary transaction. So by definition, you're making yourself better off if you're entering into any kind of market transaction or market trade. And that goes for whether it's across town or across borders.
Well, and what you would hope is that the members of Congress, particularly of the Democrats, who are just sitting on everything, would really care about the individuals out there and the farmers, and they're all small businesses, they're family-run businesses, they work hard, they're the backbone of this country, wonderful people. You'd think that they would put that ahead of their personal power grab, and I feel so pessimistic about that at this point. Because it's sitting there, the ability to move these people forward, and the unintended consequences of the success of the USMCA that we don't even know about right now, but what the benefits inure to the average Joe out there, it just breaks my heart when I see that the Democrats don't want to pass anything. Nancy Pelosi won't bring it to the floor. They can't get to a vote. They had the votes. It was a good bipartisan effort, and it just sits there, and it's so sad.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, trade is one of those issues that's making me sad across the board. I'm fully in agreement with you. I think, that there's no reason why the House shouldn't act on this other than pure, unadulterated politics and power and so on. And on the flip side, the Trump administration, I would argue, shouldn't be going down the path it's been going in terms of, for example, trade with China and threatening, other countries that they're going to pull back on trade. That's not productive. We need to reclaim as the United States. We were the leader on the planet for free trade and showing people the benefits of free trade, and we need to get back into that position. And if we do that, we're going to see tremendous benefits to the United States. And you know what? We're going to see tremendous benefits for our trading partners. Trade is a win-win. It's not us against them. It's a win-win scenario. That's the wonderful thing about it.
Well, Ray, amen to that. Brother Ray, we're right with you. Ray Keating, Chief Economist at the Small Business and Entrepreneurship Council. Ray, thanks for being on the show.
I appreciate it, guys. Great talking to you.
Coming up, Dr. Rothman and I are going to have some final thoughts for the day.
Made in America.
Welcome to Made in America. I'm your host, Neil Asbury, together with co-host, Dr. Rich Ruffman. So, Rich, Bernie Sanders, one of your favorite people, and AOC have teamed up, and they've teamed up in a big way. And I think Bernie Sanders, it's amazing to see, how the squad has really backed Bernie in a major way. I guess Bernie's he's a great convincer.
Bernie indicated that AOC, she's such a genius, would have a good position somewhere in his administration with all her vast knowledge of, running nothing. But yeah, that's great.
And I was vice chair of the Export Council, the District Export Council, and appointed by the Secretary of Commerce,
henceforth known as the DEC.
And a gentleman who was in the Obama administration, I became very close with, and we met quite a lot, had dinner together, was Ro Khanna. Ro Khanna worked at the International Trade Administration that oversees American trade. Therefore, the Export Council is part of that. A very, very great guy. I enjoyed being with him, and he's now Bernie's campaign manager. And, he and I would talk a lot, and, I always felt that he was a great pro-business on the side of the entrepreneur, small business, and so forth. And, just wanted to see both sides come together. He was appointed by President Obama, so he's a political appointee of Obama's. And he was a great guy. And I read about him a lot now. I see him quoted all over the place as the campaign manager of Bernie Sanders. And so the reason I bring that up is that Bernie has been able to attract a very interesting group of people to his campaign. And Ro on the side, who I think is a very genuine, very reasonable, very level-headed guy on one side, but on the other side you have AOC and the squad. It's like very, very far apart, at least of what I imagined to be. So AOC and Bernie has now come up with another great giveaway. Mm-hmm. It just keeps like every week another, what is it, $180 billion this time?
This is a good one. Just this week, Bernie Sanders and AOC, it makes it easier to say, unveiled an environmental bill. It's very interesting. And that kind of ties in to their Green New Deal that they talked about, many, many months ago. Everybody was, this is great. We're going to eliminate carbon dioxide. We're going to do all sorts of great stuff. We're going to shut down airplanes. People, of course, we're going to put all the airplane industry out of business. We can take trains, including to Hawaii. All these things that are out there. But here they want to address public housing. And a great way to get started in defossilizing the United States is to completely upgrade public housing buildings by adding solar panels and other forms of renewable energy in an effort to retrofit, rehabilitate, and decarbonize the entire nation's public housing stock. And the legislation would cost about $180 billion over a 10-year period and help nearly 2 million public housing residents live. Oh, my goodness, they can get all their electricity as long as it's out, sun's out, and not raining too hard. And it's not snowing too hard if they're up north and not covered in ice. But with solar panels. Now, I find that to be remarkable coming from the Democrats, because one of the things that we covered so extensively, and one of the most cronyism, the poster child for cronyism was Solyndra. And what did Solyndra make? They were making solar panels. And you remember that they got like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds
and $1 billion from the
all
US
this
government.
Money from the Obama administration.
Who came back that was a very large contributor
to the Democratic
to the charities
Party
of Michelle Obama,
yes,
and
all that wonderful stuff. They didn't make anything. They didn't make anything because they went. What was the word? Bankrupt. They went out of business. The leaders of the company actually probably got some money out of it, but we do know it went back to the Democratic Party. And so here, I find this amazing how what's old is new, and we don't learn our lessons. And, hey, it worked last time. Let's try it again because it was such a good thing to do. We're going to have solar panels on top of public housing. We're going to retrofit all the buildings, and I'm sure nothing will go wrong with that, Neil. $180 billion to defossilize. And as AOC was saying, climate change represents both a grave threat and a tremendous opportunity. The Green New Deal for Public Housing Act will train and mobilize the workforce to decarbonize the public housing stock and improve the quality of life for all its residents. And I'm sure not one solar panel will get stolen.
Or probably installed, but we'll still spend $180 billion.
$180 billion.
Rich, that's the final word. Unfortunately, we're out of time. It went by so fast.
I know.
But we'll be back again next week for another adventure of Made in America, where we never stop fighting for your jobs.